Now, Aleksander is going to be materializing. So Aleksander is one of the co-founders at Sky.biz, which is the company behind Axie Infinity, which is basically the blockchain games company everyone's talking about. Here he is. Hello.
Hi guys.
I know you're very busy. Thank you for materializing. How many conferences a day are you in these days?
Actually, I'm in another conference right now, so I snuck out into a meeting room. So,
oh, right.
So that was why I was a little bit late, but it turns out I wasn't late. I'm happy about that.
Good. So I think we've got quite an open opportunity now for the next. What are we doing for the next sort of half an hour to chat about stuff, which is great. So I guess I'd also like to get as many questions as possible because I think. Axie Infinity has really been this ignition point for people finally taking blockchain games seriously, and it's been lots of sort of a crystallization point for lots of discussion. Some of it sort of, some of it I think generally sort of good, kicking the tires of this blockchain game space, and Axie Infinity sort of sits there as this sort of poster child for everything good and bad about blockchain games. But I guess let's sort of start off. I mean, I think it's interesting sort of the journey the founders had for Sky.biz and back in sort of 2017, 2018, that's when the germ of the idea came about. So for people who kind of just think you sort of materialized in the last sort of 6 months with this great sort of company and found success, I mean, really that success has been predicated on years of not success. Perhaps I won't say failure necessarily, but you've had some pretty hard years. So what was the original idea and how have you sort of made it through to this point when lots of other projects coming around the same time as you guys just didn't make it for various reasons?
Yeah, it's interesting that let me know if the sound is okay here, by the way. Then have
yes, all good. But all good.
Yeah, so it's interesting that you would say or frame it in that way that we didn't have success, or I guess it's all relative to what is success. I think we always had a core community. We always had many people who were very excited about what we were building, and we always had conviction that this would go the way it did. I think that's the difference between our company and many others, that we weren't afraid to think long term rather than trying to maximize for whatever short-term gains there were, because people were getting antsy and desperate and thinking that this space was not going anywhere. So we were had conviction. We had our strategy. There were ups and downs when we figured out that, hey, okay, we can't only make the game. We also need to make the infrastructure to make this work. Oh, not only the infrastructure, but we also need to make the distribution channels. So these are discoveries that we found as we went along. But once we found them, we figured out, well, the opportunity to capture a larger mass market is also there. So that's why Axie and Sky.biz is now much more than the simple game that maybe people are judging us on. And I think people will be surprised continuously, or continue to be surprised by our ingenuity and our ability to execute on the very high ambitions that we have.
I wondered how long before we got to community, which is obviously for you guys straight away. And I guess that was interesting where, back in the day, sort of, I guess, early 2018, when I started getting interested in this stuff, and Axie was obviously, to some degree, a very different product then in terms of what you did with it, but obviously the same axes. And that was always the thing that we heard. Axie's got the best community. Axie's got the best community. So, and I think, again, it's sort of community has now become this sort of thing that everyone in the blockchain game space, or everyone in the blockchain space, just talk about community. But do you think you got that because you were just early and you managed to sort of a group of people sort of coalesced in your Discord? You were one of the first sort of projects to have a Discord and have that sort of populated with the team and have that communication channel. Was it a certain amount of serendipity there, or how do you think you sort of built community? I guess particularly in sort of 2019, which was really like the crypto winter, and there was very little sort of positive news there. I mean, those are the times where you build community, I guess. Yeah,
so I think a lot of people are talking about community, and they actually talk about live operations. So that's a combination, and I think the community stems from the core team and the willingness that team has to engage with its players, which then again, in games is generally live operations that you communicate through the game. If you don't have a game, you need to communicate to the players directly on a Discord channel. So that was what the initial game was. And that doesn't scale. Like, that's human capital, which is not scalable to the same level as a game is, because then you can outsource that to your servers. So that's, in relation to traditional games, it's not scalable at all. But when the money that these players are putting into it, it's almost like you're bootstrapping a VIP. Like, if you are, like, in the same sense that you do live operations to a group of whales in a Zynga type of, free-to-play game, you're doing live operations with a group of whales in your blockchain kind of space, and your blockchain, game. And the interesting thing is, the early stages of blockchain, everyone was almost whales or would become whales because they're so early in the space. So naturally, those things are somewhat connected. And I would say, it has to. We did unscalable things for so long, where we were just chatting and chatting and chatting with people, getting them to, like, they needed to get to know us. And a portion of that is, on the biz and growth side, there wasn't really that much else to do, because we couldn't do BD in the same way that we can do now, because nobody believed in the space. So we were there, me and one of the other co-founders, Jeff Geos, is also like one of the probably best community builders that has ever existed, I would say. But he was also there just chatting 12 hours every day almost, and that is really hard to replicate today, because there is so much excitement in the space. There is so much so much competition for the eyeballs, that you can't build the same level of conviction with your core player base. So there was really like a unique moment in time, like in 2019, and we like to say that people should be happy if a new bear market hits, because that means that you can actually build that level of community that will bring you forward into a new success. So it's different than I think what other traditional game studios are expecting. But we are not a traditional game studio at any sense of the word.
Mm-hmm. No, I was going to ask that. I mean, how much of the fact that you you were sort of a pro esports player, but you've never made a game. I mean, Jeff is a super intelligent guy into loads of military history and economics and stuff. But again, not game makers. I'm not quite sure about the guys in Vietnam, if they'd made some games before. But clearly, you were sort of a non-traditional sort of startup, and came out of the kind of crypto kitty sort of explosion, like a lot of sort of teams did. You sort of got NFTs from there. Do you think you just approached it in a different way than a traditional game maker would have done, and that sort of the fact that you were driven by conviction meant that the fact you couldn't sort of make a great game to begin with wasn't the important bit, because you weren't there to make a great game. You were there to sort of kickstart a revolution, although whether you would have put it in those ways at the time.
I guess we didn't know that it would be a revolution. We always had an idea that this would have the potential to change gaming, that NFTs would do it. We weren't necessarily sure that it would be Axie that would take off. Like, we could be that if we didn't hit the same level of community, maybe we would have gone into something else. But a lot of people, they loved what we were doing. So that is kind of led us down that path, where we just kind of doubled down on what we had, because we had those core early believers. Coco, Whale, like he's random that the names of the players or the nicknames of the players. That one person had a very, very big impact in the founding of Axie to an extent. So yeah, there is a level of naivete, I would say, that we had in the team that actually led to the success, that because we didn't give up when I would think a lot of traditional game developers would give up, because you don't see that immediate level of traction. And that it also comes from the understanding that that what we were building was on the intersection of gaming and new technology. So that means that we couldn't execute on what we wanted, but when things are generally hard, it also means that the opportunity is probably a lot bigger than people can expect, if you can find that lower level of traction, at least first, that people are willing to jump through these hoops, even if there's a lot of value that's being lost, even if there's a high chance of getting scammed. So that conviction that we built over time comes from the community, but also comes from the belief that we truly believe that NFTs were going to change the way that games were being played forever. And not only because it's cool for game items, but also because it is actually cool for the fact that people can, build their digital identities through these games. Like, you start out with one game, the items that you get, you might not necessarily, be able to use them in other games, but the fact is that at least they're in your wallet and you can see your history. Like, I've been doing, as you mentioned, like competitive gaming for 15 years. I represented Norway in Warcraft 3. Like, the only proof I have of that is like I need to Google and there might be one random page in Russian that's mentioning my nickname because it was before esports was cool. But now you can actually truly have internet history that's not disappearing, and that's incredibly powerful.
Yeah. Just the guy you mentioned there, I don't know if it's the guy, we shoot this guy, Coco Bear. Really interesting to see on Twitter. I mean, I've had discussions about him. He's sort of this legendary character. He's obviously got an Axie as an icon, but one thing I think people sort of miss with all this NFT sort of analysis is people like that who sort of come on board and really commit to your project and are part of the community and own all these assets and they sort of stick with you and make it. And to a degree, I'm not saying Axie wouldn't have made it without people like Coco Bear, but that's the gearing you get by. You're handing over control to your community, but what you get back is they're the ones who sort of keep you going. They won't necessarily work for all blockchain games, but that's the opportunity, isn't it? That's the potential to really sort of bootstrap yourself with these people who are in some ways more committed than you because maybe they don't know all the problems you're trying to deal with. Anyway, let's move on. Let's not stay in the past. I will get to some questions, but I don't know how much you can sort of kind of talk about this, but obviously this year I imagine, or the last few months have been pretty crazy for you. I mean, how's it just been being a distributed team who basically no one knew who you were, no one wanted to talk to you, to now being like the new kids in town, everyone wants a piece of you. I'm sure your kind of media requested through the roof. Is that just lovely because it's great to have success, or how do you deal with that on a personal sort of level? Sleep.
Which we are trying to keep it cool. I think the fact that we've been through a boom and bust before, like when we founded the company early in 2018, like crypto was at its peak, it was all the rage, everyone was so excited, and then it died down. So, we take these things with a grain of salt. When I look at the numbers and I see, okay, we made $600 million in revenue over the past, 3 months, I still think that these are the early innings of what we're trying to achieve here. So this might be early levels of success. It can potentially go down. It will go down a little bit and then we'll go back up again. Like, these are natural fluctuations in this market that we're operating in. So I think we're keeping it much more like cooler than we would have ever thought. The truth is, like, there's just so much stuff to build that we haven't had a chance to really taste that success that's happening. Now that I'm here, like at this conference, like I see people in real life and they're like stunned at what's happened. To me, it's really weird because we've been building overall during this time, and when you're only building and talking to people who have the same level of conviction as yourself, it's not really weird what you're trying to achieve. So to me, it's like, it's cool, but I still see that the potential here is massive to build more stuff.
How do you find, it's not just the success you've had, it's the, you're the first one to do this at scale. You had this particular kind of interesting kind of situation where a lot of sort of Filipinos in particular are sort of playing your game, and or not, I mean, it's not just Filipinos, but they're sort of a big group. Is it like 40-50% of the players on the place? And so you're starting to sort of gain attention for a sector, and also you're sort of gaining this kind of issues about the Filipino government looking at sort of complaining whether you should be taxed because your Sky.biz is a Vietnamese company, and you're having to tweet out to people to pay your taxes, and all this sort of stuff, which I'm sure you never sort of thought would be something you'd have to do, which is sort of the mundane aspects of being a success, but you're a very small team. I don't know if you have a legal department either, and suddenly you're being asked, probably you personally me. As well. Yeah,
I'm the legal department.
You're getting asked these very complicated sort of geopolitical questions about this sort of stuff, and there's no answer, and you're not a lawyer, so how quickly do you have to get a lawyer?
We have, to be clear, like I'm the legal department, but we have the top of the line lawyers who are assisting us, and I only expect this to be more because Axie Infinity is touching on fintech too. To an extent, like we're building using financial technology, like blockchain is that by nature. And then, it's the level of user education. People need to understand what it is that they're getting into. Like, we don't market our game as, a way to make money easily, or, you can get rich here. Our players might say that to others, but we say that you can earn tokens in the game, and you can use those tokens for others, so that other people, so that you can use them in other games, for example. Like, we don't add liquidity for smooth love potions, for example. That's the players did that. Like, exchanges are listing those tokens out of their own accord. So, I mean, these are complex regulatory questions, and I think there will be only more and more and more up and coming as you become like more successful. I remember back in the day we used to lean on the fact that, well, we're not the market leader, so we can let other people dictate the pace. It turns out that now we are the market leader, so we actually need to do this job for the entire space, and to help set the standards, and to help make sure that people are good actors, so to say, and to help ensure that we don't make any glaring mistakes, as I'm sure that we are doing right now. But this is a new market. There are gray areas everywhere. Like, the regulators, they are trying to regulate it as best they can, and there definitely needs to be some kind of regulation, especially when you consider all the scams that are popping up and all the pre-sales that are never delivering. But when you look at Axie, well, what do we say that we do? And we do it. Like, we execute on our vision. So, I mean, if even we can't hold up to the regulatory scrutiny, I would be very hard pressed to see who would.
Yeah. And I guess just to reiterate that point you're sort of making, you're providing a sort of core service, but by the very nature of running on an open blockchain, is that the feature is that other people can do things with those assets without your permission. They can build on top of that. And I guess the interesting sort of synergy here is with Yield Guild Gaming, who are now they're working in other blockchain games, but they're the people who sort of popularized this idea of a scholarship where players are coming in, borrowing the Axie assets from a kind of third party, and then the revenue they earn in Axie Infinity gets split among that group of people. You guys don't earn it. It's a layer that's built on top of you. So I can understand that regulators do get sort of very confused but by that sort of thing. Right, so we have let's go on to some questions now. How would you convince other established studios to incorporate blockchain, or would you convince them, or how do you think they should? If I was a game developer who sort of looked at Axie, sort of trying to understand it and think, how can I use that in my game? Do they need to go sort of full on into this sort of thing? Are there sort of kind of simpler ways in which you think you can get sort of some of the benefits, or do you have to basically do a full on Ethereum based or whatever game?
I mean, that's the question that only these game studios can answer. Like, are they prepared to give away all the revenue that they are earning to the player base and only take a portion of that? Like, if you do that, then the net value of the ecosystem that you're building is going to be bigger. Like, these are basic, I think, concepts that people can understand if you put them, if you compare a game universe to a real nation. So I use this lately more and more. So, like, I'm Norwegian. And when we see, like, in Norway, we have a tax rate, let's say 36%. And then the rest of that is being generated by the people who are inhabitants of Norway. And then they can do business among each other, and you have to pay taxes on the money that you're making. Like, I can see a future where these digital spaces, like, they allow people to make money inside their games, and then the game is the nation, or the people who take the taxes. And the same is, actually happening in Axie, where we have a tax rate on the marketplace after the person has already made the money. So I think that's why you see some absurd numbers like $2.1 billion in traded volume on our NFT marketplace, and why the market cap for AXS is over like 18 billion fully diluted. So I would say that there are different ways of designing a game for like AAA game studios with existing IPs. Let's assume Nintendo, probably the most defensive company in the world when it comes to IP, but also with one of the most, or probably the most recognizable IPs in the world. Like, would they probably put their stuff on Ethereum? Highly unlikely, because it's too hard to defend. It's too hard to make sure that you can actually, make that revenue that you want on the secondary marketplace. So how can we, as the early adopters in this space, potentially solve those problems for those larger game studios? Like, that can potentially be solved by a new standard of token, or another type of marketplace, or a more centralized server, basically, or a more centralized different place. So I think these are issues these are questions that's hard to answer initially, but It also depends on how aggressive the game designer or game developer is, because the opportunity here right now is massive. Like, this is a new market being created in front of your very eyes. And for those who are just on the fence right now, well, you're making a mistake. That's all I can say.
Yeah, I think from my discussions with game developers, it is kind of quite interesting to see sort of the risk profile, and it sort of depends a little bit on I think where you are in the world, and it depends a little bit on how established you are as a company. If you're the more established and the more sort of US centric you are, the more worried you are about stuff like tax and that sort of thing, and legals, and the kind of younger you are, and maybe more in Eastern Europe or Asia, that sort of less worried you are. And I guess everyone sort of picks their risk profile, that the aggressive way in which they would approach a new market. I think there's no right or wrong way. I mean, I don't think everyone should try and do Axie Infinity. I think you've sort of iterated something in a particular time with a particular community that's got you to where you are. I don't think that can be replicated. I think someone launching an Axie Infinity I can always guarantee that's not going to work, no matter what the IP is, really.
I mean, it depends. Like, if you want to copy like, we see that happening, of course, all the time right now. Axie Infinity clones, they're copying the tokenomics, they're copying the way that we built our community, and this was bound to happen, but I have yet to see any meaningful, success there in the long term, because if it was that easy, everyone would just copy Axie immediately. But I truly don't believe that it's possible to, in the same way that we did.
And how quickly do you think the sort of, I mean, it's kind of funny because I always use the term Nintendo as well, because we know Nintendo will be like last to that, or we assume they're going to be last to this sort of party. But I mean, how quickly do you see the Activisions and the Zyngas and the EAs and those people sort of even sort of issuing NFTs? I mean, is that just a step too far for them on the risk profile side of things?
I mean, yeah, I don't come from the traditional gaming space and mobile. I mean, you are probably better suited to answer that question than me, to be honest. Like, when I see the companies that appeared during, the web 2.0 and the mobile era, these were new companies who got the largest market share first. So I think, from that, I wouldn't assume that Zynga and these other large companies will be able to move fast enough and be aggressive enough to capture or to be a major player in the new market that's coming, just because, as you mentioned, the risk profile is too heavy, and they have existing stakeholders who would disagree with their path forward. So, like, maybe I could see a spin-off of Zynga. Like, I guess that's already happening almost. Gala Games is like the Zynga version to an extent, but not exactly the same. So I mean, maybe I would put that back to you. Like, do you see them doing it, or would you rather see someone like us and, let's say, Flow or I mean Dapper Labs or Mythical Games or Gala, whatever, doing it first?
Yeah, no, I mean, people aren't paying to hear my answers to that, okay. Unfortunately. But no, I do think what's interesting is the traditional kind of games thing is that a new technology comes along, it's not big enough for a long time, it gets big enough, and then you sort of acquire someone. So I guess Activision Blizzard buying King is sort of the kind of example of mobile gaming. It got big, they didn't want to build it internally, they spent $6 billion buying a company that was. The interesting thing with blockchain, I think, is, to a degree, even now, you can't, I mean, Sky Mavis is a company with stock, but no one could sort of acquire you because the thing is sort of on a blockchain, and it could be forked. The community go, we don't want it to be bought by EA. We will fork the game and take our assets over there. There's a different sort of mechanic there when it comes to how, sort of big dependent studios can get into the next thing. In blockchain, I think it's very hard to sort of capture that, just because of the way the business model is disrupted. So that's what I think is interesting. Anyway,
I do agree, but I also think that we are bound to see acquisitions in the space, so that they can tap into the infrastructure that some of these teams are creating, probably with less successful IPs than Axie. And if we were to get acquired, even though I can tell you for sure that that's not going to happen anytime soon, like the IP, it belongs to Sky Mavis, but the Axie Infinity game, like, it's written in the white paper how these things will be done, and if we do change it, like, a lot of that is also unchangeable in smart contracts. So I don't see that being a success in any case, and the community would be outraged.
Exactly.
They would never accept something like that, and it would also go against our entire ethos of building this game. So it's a vastly different thing. And why would we need to be acquired? We have tokens, like we like that's it. But if we were to IPO or something on Sky.biz, I mean, that I can see that as a potential exit. But if not, like the liquidity is always there in tokens.
Yeah. And I guess something that always comes up, we're sort of coming to the end now, and this was actually the title, I think, of the whole talk. People always talk about the sustainability of Axie Infinity, and I think they mean that on two levels. There's a very specific sort of level in which everyone looks at exactly how the economy is working, and you've obviously just tweaked the breeding mechanics, and it's less of one token and more of another token, and there's all this discussion about whether it's there's a requirement of like a sort of a pyramid scheme that you always need more people coming in buying off the. I'm not going to go into that, but more generally, how do you think about sustainability? Because clearly you are running an economy, at a game economy at a level no one else has done before at this level in terms of the value and the number of the users and the openness of that economy. So more not in the specifics, but how do you think about sustainability in the long run? And because you are effectively, running a sort of like a nation state economy. That's effectively what you're doing now in that game.
Yeah. So a lot of people are naturally worried about that, and I think they are judging Axie on its current, like on the current status of the game, and I think that's a mistake given where we're headed and what we are communicating outwards, because we've never said that Axie is finished. It's a product that's consistently being upgraded and changed, and the current game that people are playing has been live for 18, 19 months. So without any like meaningful upgrades other than resetting the seasons and balancing a little bit here and there. So you can imagine what have we been doing in the meantime. I mean, we're building for the future here so that we can provide more games inside the Axie universe and make it more sustainable. So right now there are maybe 600,000 like souls in the Philippines who are making a living playing the game. Naturally, that's a very, very heavy amount of responsibility on the core team. So I can assure you that we're trying our very, very best to make sure that this is sustainable for the long term. So I think people are when people are making like uncalled for judgments on the game and what it is we're trying to achieve, like they haven't done enough research into making those calls. I think a lot of it comes from ignorance, unfortunately, and also that they are frightened that how is this possible? It doesn't make sense in their mind, so they need a more elastic mind to understand what's happening here. And of course, like there's a matter of speculation here. Like a lot of people are speculating on this new economy, and that's also a reason for why this is working as well as it is. But that's something that we have to lean into as a company. We can't lean out of it. Like we can't shut it down. Like that would be absurd. So what else can we do than ride the wave and make sure that we have a clear roadmap, like that we're delivering more services, more features, so that people can actually make a living in Axie and have fun in the game down the line, even more than they have today. So that also, like, how do you define fun? Well, a lot of people are having fun on the marketplace. A lot of people are having fun playing the game itself. Like Axie is more than just when you battle against another player. If you say that that's the game, you fundamentally misunderstood what's happening here. So I think that's a very important aspect of what we're trying to build.
Cool, good, lovely. Thank you very much for your time, Aleksander. We'll leave it at that. A pleasure as ever. Talk to you.
All right. Thanks,
People can always find you on Twitter and the usual places if they want to go into a bit more.
Oh yeah, Psychout86 on Twitter. Yeah. I do some shit posting there. I'm not as good as Jeff though. He's like definitely the Twitter god in the company.
Good.
Definitely follow me for some stuff if you're interested in blockchain gaming.
Good. And you all should be, because you're at the conference about blockchain gaming. So thank you for half an hour. Go back to your other conference.
Thank you. Bye.
Don't get too busy.